that I know you visited the Creation
man.
Museum, right? You
yeah.
went and got some knowledge on this,
Yeah.
and so
Okay.
I think you'll have a lot to say, and you'll inform me a lot. I don't really know as much about what would be said here.
Okay.
But first point would be just young Earth theory. So the idea
Yeah.
that the Earth is only 6,000 years old.
About 6,000
About
years
6,000 years old versus the millions of years that science says that it is based on like carbon dating and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? And then I would throw in what my line of our discussion point would be an idea called gravitational time dilation.
This is armchair
which-
physics.
Big,
This is armchair
big
physics.
word, but for anyone that's watched Inception, you know what it is because it's an idea that comes out of a scene from Inception. So we'll get there. But
Okay.
So young Earth. So Kyle, is it young Earth or old Earth?
Yes.
I like it. Moving on. Next topic. All right.
Next topic.
Can we have perfect? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So I think that there's like a legitimate conversation. This was something like maybe about a year ago. I was much more vexed over this question. I think I spent a lot of time trying to understand the various arguments for a young Earth versus arguments for an old Earth or something in between, right? So I did go to Ken Ham and see Ken Ham's Creation Museum, right?
Creation Museum is where? What?
It's in Kentucky.
Okay. Creation
And-
Museum in Kentucky.
In Kentucky, you can go there. You get to be able to pretty much walk through their good rendition of various Bible stories, and they kind of it's artistic based, right? It's really interesting. And then they have a pretty solid bookstore that's surrounded around creation science, essentially, which gets to some degree laughed out of universities and laughed out of mainstream conversation with scientists. But there is nonetheless some valid arguments that are in creationism and a young Earth theory.
Yep.
So
Give me a valid argument.
young Earth is
Earth is 6,000 years old. Go.
Yeah, when we talk about a literal interpretation of Genesis 1, that's where it really centers around. When we say literal, we don't mean literary in that it has literary elements like metaphor or hyperbole or poetic nature, but we mean something like Genesis 1 presents a historical account of how the earth was created in 7 literal days, right?
Yep.
And that account is also kind of reasoned back to when we go through the various genealogies of the New Testament and the Old Testament. And when you add up all the ages of people, right? Adam, Noah, Enoch, all these different individuals. I think it was a bishop in the 1800s that did it.
Anyway, you add them all up.
You add them all up, you get 6,000 years.
Yep.
Right? So that means that according to the Bible, according to some interpreters, the earth must be 6,000 years old if we are to take the Bible at its word.
Right. The genealogy from Adam
to present day is 6,000 years.
That is not many years.
No, it is not. But it becomes...
But now you throw on top of this. So we take the Bible. We've got 6,000 years. And we Christians were like, hey, man, Bible's infallible word of God.
What do we do about that?
Well, no, what happens, right, is then the science, right, which we Christians, we love science. We don't have a problem with science. Science comes forward, though, and says, hey, it's actually billions of years. It's like really old.
Yeah.
It's like
Carbon dating.
We have this idea called carbon dating, which says, no, we analyze the atoms of this rock or whatever. And by analyzing the atoms and decay rates and all this type of stuff, we say it's millions, billions of years old.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
So what do we do? I think that's...
How do you say yes? I think I have an answer.
Yes.
That I can't prove with like mathematical formula yet.
Armchair physics. Armchair physics.
So, exactly.
I'm fancifully imagining how to reconcile.
No. I think that I do genuinely think that there is the answer's in there.
Yeah, a wonderful guy named Jason Lissel, and he did some research on like stars and stuff like that. He's a Christian. He's one of the guys that gets referenced a lot by Ken Ham at the Creation Museum. Okay, but he's like legit PhD in astrophysics.
Well, hold on. What does the Creation Museum say about the 6,000 years? Like, they just say like and the science, right? Because they've got to address it.
Any literal interpretation of the Bible, right? One that tries to take it at its word, must come to the conclusion that the Earth is 6,000 years old. That's the position that they hold, and then they develop a very complex scientific theory that includes geology, astrophysics, and archaeology to explain these things.
Which is
what?
What's the answer? What's the answer? How do they?
What's the answer? The flood is ultimately the key to how they talk about it. So much of the geology is going to be explained through an Earth-wide flood. So the reason why we can find fossils so deep down and so low is because when we had an Earth-wide flood, it changed the geography and the topology of the Earth so much so that it deposited remains of things so deep in the Earth. And then what you have is fossilization that occurs. We think it has to take millions of years. Well, not under an immense amount of pressure under a very short period of time. So if we can create an immense amount of pressure through the movement of various things, then
science, bro.
So we have to
Also, like pressure, like if the Earth flooded,
correct
the
amount
weight,
of pressure,
the pressure
of the water.
water.
Correct, exactly. And that what it does is at that time, some of the animals, and then they explain the difference between kinds, species, genus, right? All these different various ways that scientists attempt to explain the zoology of all the animals that got onto Noah's Ark, right? They use genetics to explain the various ways in which a given parent, right, of two animals, right, can create all the genetic variations that we see, whether they're like rams that exist in the mountains of China to rams that exist in Nepal to rams that exist in the desert, right? All these various different kinds of animals that are explained through genetics, but could ultimately be traced back to one male and one female set on Noah's Ark. And so they have this
all right, so solid stuff. Love the pressure thing. But now what about carbon dating?
Carbon dating. One of the things that they
because that's like carbon dating is a big bone of contention, right? Like if you're gonna say, hey, we have the scientific thing that lets us analyze these atoms, and then therefore we can say by looking at them that they are this old. That seems like a pretty I don't know if the word stalwart argument. No, like a pretty strong argument.
A strong argument. So one of the things that Can-Am is going to introduce is going to be the lack of reliability in carbon dating. So
So fair enough. I've looked
how
at
do you explain anomalies?
It's little sketch. It's little sketch.
Yeah. So there's a lot about there's a lot about carbon isotopes and the decay of isotopes over time and what are the effects, right? So we think in science.
By the way, so just to back up for the viewers that don't really understand. So basically, again, the idea is that isotopes or atoms and whatnot, they decay over time. Like they have like an aging property to them, right?
Yes.
And so then what carbon dating does is try to look at that decay rate and determine, because it's been decaying and it's at this current state, we know what it should have been over time.
Yes.
Basically.
It's a form of reverse engineering looking back in time.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the way that people are going to look at, I think, the Big Bang and attempt to deduce the age of the universe from looking at the rate at which planets and stars are moving away from one another. So they look at the rate at which they're moving away from one another, and then if they reverse the equations, what would it look like if they were to come back, right?
Wait, say it again.
So if
it went.
Okay.
Just say it again. Just say it again.
All right. The rate at which stars and light is moving away from one another in the universe.
Yeah,
right?
This is redshift, blue shift.
Redshift, blue shift. Okay. It's expanding. So what if we reversed engineered it and we were to say, what would the math look like if it were to contract? And then we contract it all the way down to a singular point. We take into account the rate at which it does that, and then if we look at the rate, how long would it take for everything to get back together to a single point? Right. The point of
reverse
singularity.
Reverse engineering.
Then we deduce about 14.6 billion years. Right. And that allows us then to be able to say how old the universe is, and it's very similar with, I think, carbon dating. Not an expert. I study English.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, so this is good. So this is all good stuff. So now let me throw another thing in there. So maybe you've heard of the idea that God creates with age, right? So someone would go to the story of Jonah and talk about how, God grows this vine up overnight to provide shade to Jonah, and then it withers the next day or whatever. And the question is okay, if God grows a tree, like if God miraculously, because God can do it, if he miraculously grows a tree and then you cut that tree, right, would it have no rings because he just created it, or would it have rings with age because it's a full-size tree?
Yeah, I think is a similar line of reasoning and questioning, like how, when he made Adam and Eve, right? Did he make them as adults? Or were they babies? Right? Did they have to grow up and then they sinned, or were they made as children?
And that's where the stork comes from, because animals took care of Adam and Eve because they were created as babies.
Yes.
And they were raised by wolves and stuff like that. That's where it all comes from. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what happened. All right. I'm not aware that that's what happened.
So far as we know.
Yeah.
So far as the information in the Bible, it's plausible.
You're right. Yeah. It seems more
possible.
Based on the Bible, it seems like God sculpted Adam and Eve full size. It was
he took a pile of mud and went and made a human being. But I think that I don't like that line of reasoning personally.
Okay,
really
why not?
Because it would seem
great to me. Like, it seems like a great line of reasoning.
Okay, then why?
So why am I wrong?
So I think that the implication has then, if God makes the earth to look old, and then he
no, it's not. It's not just like, I'm going to deceive them and make it look old. It's I am going to set in motion. I'm going to create. I'm going to create, and I'm going to set it in motion. So I have to create the earth, and he creates the earth with oil and all the stuff. I guess probably the argument would be the fossils, right? Why would God just put fossils to test our faith?
And like
go.
I think that the explanatory power, that's just not so great. Like, what would he create entirely different species, put them way down there to test our faith when we discover them, and he made the carbon dating look like it was really old, even though the Bible says the earth is 6,000 years old. But God doesn't try to deceive us.
So,
I'm like, don't like that kind of reason.
No, that's good. This is really good. So that's a good point. So that's kind of that's got some holes in it. So gravitational time dilation.
Gravitational time dilation. All right. Okay.
This is where I think the key's somewhere in here. Maybe not the actual, and I'm going to explain gravitational time dilation. But so I think the key is here in somewhere, in like the fact that gravity and time and stuff like that are related.
Okay.
They're dimensions, and there is an impact between them. So this is getting pretty heady physics stuff, but this is why I go back to Interstellar. So
the relationship between space and matter is something like time.
And velocity and stuff like that, right? So for example, there's an experiment where you take two identical stopwatches, you start them at the same time on Earth, you put one up on a spaceship, and then you send it around the Earth really fast, bring it back down. They have different times on them. Yeah. Because time is impacted by gravity and velocity.
These are not just like and these stopwatches are not like sports stopwatches.
Yeah, right. Like we went to Walmart and we're like, all right, ready, 3, 2, 1, click.
Go. Yeah. They're literally
super sciencey.
Somebody's phone, like they're on a phone call. They're like, all right, press it 3, 2, 1, now.
Okay, No, these were like
atomic clocks.
Atomic clocks. Highly precise.
It was something of a
clocks.
trillionth of a second.
Right, but point being, it was a simple experiment to show that it's true. It was if this occurs, then this is.
Well, and that's the crazy thing about GPSs. Like, our phones run taking into account quantum mechanics and the relationship between space and time.
Yep, exactly.
So GPS in space actually has to account for the fact that time moves a little bit slower up there than it does down here. Right. Otherwise, our GPS wouldn't actually work.
Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. So that and this is one of the reasons why I think that just on a small sidebar, we have to be honest about how effective science is and address its effectiveness as much as we say, well, what if it doesn't agree with the Bible? Right. So I think that's why
the reason I bring this up is because, like, to me, it's like we're supposed to search out the mysteries of God. We're supposed to understand all this stuff. And like, we love science. Science is good.
Science is sick.
Science is awesome. And then also we love God. And so like we trust God.
Amen.
And like God gives us the truth. So where we can actually like bring the two together, and I'm not saying we have to, like I'm not saying we have to remove all mystery, but I'm also saying where we can explain things, that's awesome. Like there's joy in revelation. Like that's part of people dedicate their lives and careers to like discovering stuff. So we are participating in a good thing, I think, by doing this. And so with gravitational time dilation.
So
I
just like saying that.
I do. It just say it with me. Gravitational time dilation.
Gravitational time dilation.
Gravitational time dilation. All right.
Say it with like a what's his name?
Gravitational time dilation.
Deep voice.
I don't know if I can.
In the
I can't
cosmos.
do it.
Not Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I was gonna say I'm not
gravitational time dilation.
I don't have your anatomical structure. I can't do that.
My anatomical structure. Yeah, the length of my femur alters the pitch of my voice.
Gravitational time dilation.
Gravitational
I can't
time
do it.
dilation.
I just can't do it.
In the beginning.
All right.
I want to do an audio Bible.
I would listen for a while, and then I would argue through. I'm arguing with Kyle's voice.
You can't interrupt with a recording.
Okay, but the stopwatch thing. Bring that up to say that it's real. Like this is not just like an Interstellar. Ooh, cool. We made this in a movie, and
it's
like
neat.
Yeah, exactly. That's neat, but no, that's not real. This is real. So in the movie Interstellar, there's the scene where they're on the ship and then they go down to the planet, and the planet is near a black hole. So they know they say something about it in the movie, time's gonna be different down there. And so they go down there, and then, by the way, total spoiler alert here. If you haven't seen Interstellar, go watch it.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. You can stop now if you want.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, keep going.
Yeah. So they go down this planet, and two of them go down, and one of them stays up on the ship. And so they go down there, and like, okay, we're going to go down. I forget how long it is.
There's a big wave.
We'll be there for like an hour in our time, which for this guy meant it's going to be like 7 years. Or something like that, right? So here's where I'm going with this, right? So check this out. So he aged. Mm-hmm. Right? They were down there for what to them seemed like 7 days. Yeah. Yet to a carbon dating person, he aged. Mm-hmm. And they did not. Right? Sure. So to me, the whole idea of carbon dating, there's an issue in there in terms of having to rationalize it with the fact that gravity and time and whatnot impact age. Yeah. The guy aged. He actually ages, right? Yeah. And then on the planet, right, what happens is they go down there like, we're going to be there for an hour. Mm-hmm. The mountains are moving. Oh, crap, they're not mountains. They're waves.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Those mountains are moving.
Right.
Towards us.
So then they get stuck on this planet for I forget how long it is, and this guy up there, he lives to be like 70 or something like that. I forget how much time passes. And I won't spoil anymore.
But they end up getting back up there, and they recognize that their experience of time was very different from his.
Right? And I would argue that by an aging perspective, right? So if we're talking about
perhaps his carbon isotopes.
Well,
yeah,
exactly. His carbon isotopes, he would show age, and theirs would not.
Sure.
And there's a time dimension gravity thing going on there. So my point would be, when you talk about the 7 days, right? And God created in 7 days and all this type of stuff.
Could it have been 24 or 6 24-hour literal days from the perception of God?
Yeah.
Yet, because of the relationship between space and matter, the actual time in which it was created was something like 14 point something billion years.
Yeah.
Which is what
the
universe suggests.
Like say in fact, like we look out, we see it looks like there's a Big Bang. We'll say, okay, looks like there's a Big Bang. Well, I don't have to sit here and refute that God didn't just go like,
yeah.
I don't know. If we truly made it.
Yeah. Well, and I think
and also think about that in a singularity, right? If all of the universe was at a single point, how, like, the whole reason that happens in Interstellar is because they're next to a black hole, supermassive, highly dense thing in the planetary system, right? If you had a singularity where the universe was supposedly
the amount of density at which that was there.
So therefore, the effect on time and all the isotopes and everything compared to where it's at now, we're out here.
Now you got a thesis. Go get a doctorate in this.
Now somebody else that's watching this, please go do the math on that.
Well, I don't like the math on this. So
I'm not smart enough for this.
I'm the thinker. This guy's gonna be my quant.
So do you think that as Christians we should affirm young Earth theory?
I don't know.
Whoa! I would have thought you would have come down on a hard line. Yes.
About a year ago, I would have. I think a year ago, I would have come down hard because I was really wrestling with what is the relationship between the inerrancy of Scripture and the age of the Earth, right? If I affirm that the Bible is true in every, so this is what I'm saying. If I affirm that the Bible is true in every single respect, right?
Yep.
Must it be true in that Goliath was 6 cubits or 6.1 cubits? How do we explain textual discrepancies, right? Manuscript discrepancies in the text. And what I was saying, ultimately,
I did not follow that. What?
Okay.
Because it didn't tell us how. Did it tell us how tall Goliath was?
No, it says that how tall is Goliath, and then there's going to be
Okay, but hold on. But you're saying 6 to 6.1 cubits versus 6,000 or 14.6 billion years.
I know. But the principle remains, and this is the question: what do we mean by inerrancy? And let me just run with this for a second, right? So when I say that the Bible is inerrant, does that mean that every single word in the Bible actually accurately represents reality? We would have to say yes, right? In that, what it was intended to represent is accurately represented, namely the height of Goliath. But when I say I'm 6'5", I don't say I'm 6'5.2.33321,
okay.
right? So there's a range at which we have to say.
Okay, but if you're going to use this, if you're using that.
Now, when I go to Genesis, what is the intention of that text? It's supposed to tell me the how God created the earth in what way. What is the importance of God in that text? And that it's that He created the earth. Now, my interpretation of that text is not inerrant, right?
Sure.
The text
okay, sure. Yeah.
My interpretation.
Sure.
Yep, in the same way, and this was the discrepancy that happened with Galileo, right? It is very famously talked about in St. Robert Bellarmine and the relationship between
my understanding
Galileo
of what
and the Catholic
is
Church.
Inerrant, maybe errant.
And Robert Bellarmine said this. He said something along the lines of, we know that the Bible is true, but our interpretation of it is not inerrant. So if it happens to be the case that the Earth is not the center of our solar system, but the sun is.
Yep.
We should not say that the Bible has been altered, but that our understanding of the Bible has been increased.
Right. No. I'm on this page.
If it's the case that the Earth was created in 6 literal days, then my understanding of the Bible is 6 24-hour days, and that is the case. We just don't have the science to explain it yet. That could be true, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, if God truly did intend that to be merely poetical, right? And
sure, because you're like allegory, revelation,
the Song of Genesis, Tim Keller, right?
Yeah.
So, if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
Then I want to be able to affirm that too. So,
right.
I think.
But do you also agree though that there's a difference between taking the Bible and trying to conclude that the sun or the Earth is the center of the solar system, versus the Bible saying God did this in 7 days is a little different?
And because I understand
it wasn't a verse where God was like the Earth. All things revolve around the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's there's
And the Christians were like, see, the Bible says that all things revolve around the earth. It was like, no, we're like, oh, well, all this understanding of the Bible we have tells us that the earth is the center, probably.
yeah.
And I'm thinking that, okay, like that's your valid, that's your argument.
Sure.
It's not sound.
It's not sound, but it's valid.
Okay. It's not sound. Based on what you've presented, maybe it's
Yeah.
valid, right? Okay. There's a big difference between that and then the Bible saying it took 7 days.
Yeah, and I think that's where the difficulty in this emerges much more. And this is what vexed me about it, was because I felt like the Bible was so much more clear about the age of the earth than it is about other matters. Like whether or not, like, is the earth
Fair
the center?
enough. So,
The Bible makes much more of an emphasis to say, this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ.
Correct.
This is who was a son of who. And
Yep.
one of the, and this is another honest complication of the matter, right? When it said that, so if we look at the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew, right, and when we look at the genealogy of Jesus in Luke, they're two different genealogies. The one in Matthew is known to omit some people
it's not a full.
of the Old Testament,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And what it means then is that so and so begat so and so, right? Abraham was father of Isaac, and Isaac father of
We
Jacob.
should, by the way, word we should use more often in our life.
Begat. Got it. Let's do it. I'm gonna begat some phrases right now. These phrases be begat.
I begat that.
I begat that. Yeah.
Name of the show, begat that.
I done begat that. So the
Genealogies, Matthew.
Genealogies, right? So when we look at the genealogies of Matthew and we try to reconcile it with what was said in the Old Testament, we have to be honest in saying that when so-and-so begat so-and-so, Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, and so on and so forth, that when names are omitted from that, it doesn't mean in our English translation when it says so-and-so was the father of so-and-so, that they were the direct father of them in the way that we have this kind of rigid designator around the world.
Right. It was like,
father.
yeah.
It was that they came from the lineage of.
Yep.
Right? So when we look at something like the genealogy that goes from Adam then to Abraham,
Yep.
right? We can look at it perhaps not in terms of this, he was
you're-
the rigid designator father
So you're
of
saying-
so-and-so,
you're saying
but that
you're
there's
not-
gaps
you're
in the
not so-
genealogy.
You're not so sure
Yes.
of the classic Christian dogmaticism around that these genealogies are fully encompassing.
Yeah, but this is, yes, exactly. But this is the one difficulty that emerges from that. Okay, grant to me that the genealogy.
I don't know if I could say much about that. I think I'd have to go
yeah.
read the text and be like, how does it read, I guess.
Well, and this is the line of reasoning that follows. Okay, grant to me that there's gaps in the genealogy. So how old is the earth then, right? If it's not 6,000, what is it, 10, 20? How far do you go back, 100,000? Have human beings been around for millions of years engaging in... No, right? Recorded history shows that, I mean, even if you follow a secular notion of when civilization emerged, it can't be more than maybe 10, 12,000 years, right? So,
Right,
so
for sure.
It'll stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And we have to come down hard on that. So I think personally, while it may not be the exact 6,000 years, it can't be something as astronomical as billions of years old in the creation. And human beings have been around for that whole billions of years.
Right, especially if you throw on top of that, like say, like I want to be careful here. Your point about the genealogies, I would have to go look into because the Bible also gives years that they lived.
Yep.
It seems very curious that they would give the years that they lived along with the genealogy,
Sure.
not for the
And there's
purpose, not for the
objections to it,
for the purpose of telling us that it was a direct
Yeah.
lineage. Now,
But-
I'm not.
And even if this was true, though, the question still remains, okay, so there's a couple gaps in the genealogy. Then what? How old is the earth then? Does it follow that it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years, right?
And what I was going to throw on top of that is just that like, well, we also talked about the potential inaccuracy of carbon dating. Like, it's not this foolproof thing that's like fully got it.
Yeah.
And so therefore, like, you could be off. Like, if you get like, it's kind of like if you're heading forward and then you get off track a little bit.
Yeah.
Way down the road, you are way off. So like with carbon dating, if you get a little wrong, you could be off by billions of years.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the Earth is actually now, in fact,
you can be a couple of
7 billion.
Yeah, you can be a couple orders of magnitude off by a slight deviation because the room for error becomes much more, much greater.
Yeah.
There's a couple more interesting points in this though, and one of them is.
And I think let's do these, and I think we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
We'll take a break real quick, and then maybe come back for some more.
Yeah. The verse. So one of the important points is that there's a verse in Peter, right, that is commonly quoted. A day is to the Lord, right, as 1,000 years are to a day.
Yep.
Right. So how do we how do we represent that?
Gravitational time dilation.
Gravitational time dilation. It all comes back to Inception and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Wait, what?
How can you argue against
Gravitational time dilation.
You can't.
You can't. It's foolproof.
100 times.
From Inception.
From Inception. Yeah.
Wait, but it's not Inception. It's Interstellar.
Interstellar.
Oh,
okay.
shoot.
You said Inception earlier, I think.
Did I say Inception?
You definitely said Inception.
Someone said it. I wouldn't.
Oh,
have
then
said
maybe
it.
I said it wrong.
It's Interstellar.
It's Interstellar.
Interception. Boom! It's Sunday.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
So-
hold on. You're saying how can you push back against gravitational time dilation?
Yeah.
In terms of like, it's not a, well,
Here's the most easy way.
in what way do you want to push back? Like using that as an argument?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The math doesn't work.
Right, which I
That's
can't
simple.
prove.
It's very simple. Well,
You I don't know if the math doesn't work.
So
but you're saying the way to push back would be show that the math does not work.
and this would be a great area where I'd be curious to see if you were to presuppose, right, that the Earth is something like 10,000 years. What would the relationship between space and matter have to be in order for something like the rate at which planets are moving away from one another, stars moving away from one another, in order for that to be the case? What would be the rate? What would our model become if we were to presuppose?
Right, you're saying,
and fit
yeah,
it
we're
to
gonna
this
be-
model
yeah.
of 10,000 years.
Right, exactly.
And that's something I'm curious about. But the mathematics on that would be so very, very, very complex.
Right. And I don't have a brain for that.
Yeah. Chris Carter, we need
Yeah,
you.
Chris Carter.
And we have a
Carter.
special guest coming up the stairs.
Yeah.
We were supposed to have some special guests, but no one
That
ever
would
came
be
up.
sick. Like confetti. That would be pretty cool.
I think we deterred them with our prior conversation.
Oh gosh, they open up the door and they're like,
I opened up the door on it. I was like, no, shut this down.
All right. Well, nonetheless, I think it's a place of ambiguity.
Oh no, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
we're talking. Remember, we're flying on the wall here.
Yeah.
So
And
we're
that's,
just talking. We're just talking.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple decades with our understanding of physics.
Oh, for sure.
Although there is a
Yeah, supercomputers are gonna figure this all out for us. So
computational modeling, Stephen Wolfram.
I can't wait till we have machine learning operate on the Bible and see if it comes to the fact of like you should put your life in Christ.
I want to make Christian AI, dude.
Christian AI.
This is all right. This is where we should go
dude,
next.
this is going on the list.
Intelligence.
This is going on the list.
I want to make Christian AI, and it'll be like must glorify God.
But that's gonna be a highly deep argument, like a technical argument.
Dude. Oh, I love this stuff though.
This is perfect. All right, hey, let's take a break real quick, and then we'll probably come back for some more. Thank you for listening, and please come back to join us for some more topics in the future.
Absolutely.